Morning, everyone, and welcome to today's lecture on grant application as a toolkit for preparing grants for both teachers, students, researchers, and anyone in that category. Let me share my slide and let's begin. Yeah, so today we'll be discussing more of the things that one need to put in place if we anticipate to get grant for instance, research purposes, for sponsoring students, or for any area that research grant is needed. It could be for travel grant and other similar purposes. And today, your servant, I'm Frank Adusei-Mensah. I'm currently affiliated to the Institute of Public Health and Clinical Nutrition at the University of Eastern Finland in Kuopio, and also a teacher student at Tampere University of Applied Sciences. Currently on the course of professional pedagogy course, that is postgraduate pedagogy course in health education. And this lecture is part of the program on development work, which is part of that professional pedagogy course. And the intent of today's lecture is to give an overview or as a toolkit in preparing research grants. And if you have any question, you can share with me, or you can also get in touch with me on Medires, the YouTube channel, Medires, and you can be in touch. So let us continue. Our lecture is scheduled for about 1 hour, and I'll try to be on time just to be able to finish the lecture within the period. But permit me if it goes a bit beyond that. Yes. So why the need to have this lecture? Grant application is very essential part in research endeavor, and it's also very important also as students as you try to graduate from one level to the other. And now pocket funding for most activities like research, travels, and other things is becoming limited because of lack of funds, and we might need some support from elsewhere. And that is the need to apply for grant. For instance, there's a project, as teachers having a project, a professor having a project, and you want some students to work on a project. And then there's a need for the student's livelihood, so you need to support that. And he cannot fund it from his salary, and so he needs a source of funding, which then the grant sources come into play. And they are important also to carry a certain important research that without which these research cannot be funded. We know, for instance, the COVID-19, when the vaccine development was urgently needed, there was even a national support of huge sums of money for these pharma industries to develop that. These are money that are not to be paid, and so they are called grants. So today we are then, so the aim of this toolkit, that is to provide the audience of the knowledge and skills necessary to write high quality grant applications. Just as a quick overview, based on previous statistics or experiences, grant application, the success rate has always been low, less than 10 to a little above 15 has been most of the grant success rate in most of the applications. And so one need to present high quality application, and the research goal should be very succinct and it should be very impactful to be able to receive grant. Here I present, for instance, the success rate for ESRC funding from the UK. I must say that the success rate is also not universal across all the fields. For instance, for this particular funding agent, the same agent, but the field of study, the success has been different because the competitiveness varies and the number of applicants for these fields varies. And so the more the number of the applicants for these fields and the higher the quality of applications, the lesser the success rate. And so one needs to present an exceptional application to receive grant. But areas like demography studies, history, law and legal studies, and technologies and methods, these areas we could see that, and social anthropology, we could see that the funding rate has been very high, But when you consider areas like research fields like management and business studies, you could see that it has been very low. When it comes to education, it's not quite impressive. When you come to development studies, not that high. When you come to psychology, again, also low, and sociology, again, also low. And so we could see that the rate varies between fields. And similarly, I try to compare to present also Academy of Finland. This is a national funding agency in Finland for academic research purposes. And we could see that the rate, even here, is much lower than we saw in the case of the UK. Here, the postdoctoral research grants has been between 13 to 15 for 3 consecutive years. That is 2020. It was higher, around 15. And then 2021, it came to 13. And 2022, it went back to 14, a bit increase there. That is for postdoctoral grants. And then academic research fellows, it was even much lower, from 11% in 2021 to 12% in both 2020 and 2022. However, the project grants was a bit higher, from 15% to 16%. And again, and then when we have all these fields combined, the average success rate has decreased from the year 2020 to 2022. That is from 15% to 14%. So every one person, every one person among 10 has the chance of succeeding in this grant application. And so to be successful, it means that our application should be waterproof. So here I present the outline or some checklists that one need to follow to be able to develop a very successful and a very impactful research grant application. For instance, evidence-based, the application should be based on previous knowledge. It should be based on evidence of what has happened in the past. We should also get to know the funders. The funding agencies vary, and then the requirements vary. Even the direction of funding, sometimes it changes from field to field and from one area to the other. And so we need to get to know them. We cannot present application we use for funding A, the same format, and present it for funding B. It will not work. So we need to know the funding agencies that are responsible for that. We also need to know the guidance and limitations and suitability, and also the criteria for all this. So we need to know the agency, and we know what they require. Sometimes they have limitation that people from these countries cannot apply, people from these fields cannot apply, people after these years of graduation cannot apply. So we need to know all this so that we don't work our heart out and eventually we are classified among the non-eligible applicants, and so our application will not even be reviewed, left alone to have the chances of receiving the funding. Create grant writing team. So after knowing all these requirements, then we create a team that will draft the grant application. So ask for assistance. We need to ask for direction and support from people with knowledge in that field, and identify critical resources needed. So after knowing the requirements, we then identify what is needed to create that application and itemize financial cost and budget for the project. We are preparing for grant, and we cannot submit a grant without knowing what are the cost implications, what money we are applying for, and how long we are going to need that. And so these are things needed to be considered before the final submission. Review the proposal and budget for the application and make corrections and seek third opinion. So we need to review the proposal. We need to seek for people's opinion to read through to see whether it makes sense and whether it can win the grant before we go ahead with the submission. Check and submit that proposal and all requested appendices. So then we need to check and evaluate the proposal. Yeah, so in a quick review, let us go through some of the few steps that we need to reference. And here I gave a case study of the Finnish Cultural Foundation, which is also an agency that fund a lot of projects in Finland. So here, refine your proposal or project goals. So you need to refine the proposal after knowing the foundation's core. They have different cores and the time of the course. So we need to plan to submit it at a certain period, and we'll submit it accordingly. And so we need to check other restrictions. There are sometimes geographical restrictions. There are sometimes priority issues. There are sometimes organizational issues. You need to be affiliated to certain institutions to be able to apply. You need to be, for instance, a doctoral student or postdoc to be able to apply. So all these things needed to be checked if we want to be successful. Evaluate the number and kind of past awards. So we also need to check the past awards, how successful it has been, and then evaluate them. And then we need to prepare a narrative proposal. Here is when we need to prepare our research proposal. After knowing that now we qualify, this is the amount we want to apply, this is the research team we are going to apply, this is the resources, the timeline we have. Now we can go ahead with the research proposal. And with the proposal, we need to have a good topic. We need to ensure that our research objectives is in line with the funding requirement. And with the proposal, we will have a quick overview on a similar sample proposal. But here, executive summary or the abstract should be very clear, simple terms, and it should be straight to the point so that the agency, when they go through the proposal, which is the abstract, which is the summary of the application, they will be able to, within a few minutes, get the idea of why you're applying, what you're going for, what you intend, or what problem you intend to solve. And this can mark or make your application. So very straightforward abstract has the chances of getting the readers or the reviewers' interest into reading the whole application, knowing what you intend to solve. And so it should also come with introduction, and then we have the research methods. The method should be precise, and the method should the intended beneficiaries and how to reach them should be captured in the method. Mobilizing resources and overcoming barriers are also areas that are also needed to be captured. And then propose project activities, what you like to do during the funding period, needed also to be captured as part of the methods. And eventually, after outlining all this, with your budget included, we can then also look for the appendices, which varies, but most essential or most common appendices are the research proposal, which should be added, and then also the CV of the applicant. Sometimes they may ask to include list of publications. They may ask to include also even the CV of collaborators. But here we are considering the regular application where the research proposal is one of the appendices, and then also the CV of the applicant. In a very fast, in a short way, we will go through at least a sample of the CV and also a research proposal to have an idea of what you are applying for, how to go about it, and how to present it. So after the submission, so after having the appendices and the references, we need to also review the application. After filling the form, usually it generates more of a PDF format of all the information you have added. We should not be rushing just to log out, but we should take our time to go through, review it, and then make corrections before eventually we push the button to submit. So as when I was going through the toolkit outline, I said that the appendices varies, but most common appendices are the CV of the applicant and then the research proposal. The research proposal is where you need to talk about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So let us take an example of the CV. First, the research proposal, a sample of that. So this proposal was intended, the project name is an INCOVA project, and it's about a COVID-19 post-market evaluation. So the title is where outlined here, in utero COVID-19 mRNA vaccine exposure and health burden during the first 5 years of life. That is in utero, during pregnancy period, and the exposure to the infant. And then when delivered, the first 5 years, 0 to 5 years of life, we want to see whether there are any adverse effects or any issues worth considering. And so the objective, the title is very clear, the application to be submitted. And then here is a table of contents for the application. And then the executive summary as I outlined in the toolkit. And I must say that all this should be done in line with the call that one is trying to apply. Why? Because every call, they usually give the page limits for the proposal. So you cannot just write anything and submit. And so having the page limit checked will help in that application. Here, the total page number is 8. And so if I'm submitting it to application which page limit is 6, I might need to revise this proposal for that application. But however, if I'm submitting it to a call which page limit is say 10, then this is just enough to go ahead with the submission. So these guidelines are usually outlined on the call of the funding agent. And so that's an introduction, as I said in the previous presentation of the toolkit. And then materials and methodology. And so here we talk about how you are going to solve the problem, what you are going to solve, and what you intend to solve, the method. But then it should precede with the research questions. Sometimes we can say the research questions, what do you intend to solve? What are the things, the problems you are here to solve? So here, for instance, we have 4 major research questions that this project intends to solve. And depending on the size of the application, we can make it work packages. So every work package is a collection of a number of questions, a number of problems, a number of issues, but related, that you intend to work on. And so it differs from the package 1, from package 2, and from package 3. Then comes the materials and methods, as I outlined. And so here we have the data source, the source of the data as part of the materials, and then you describe. It depends, and it varies between the field of study. For instance, if you are going to do laboratory tests, you just go ahead to talk about materials, how the sample will be taken, how it will be analyzed, and straightforward you go into the results and discussion. But here, if it is secondary data, you need to talk about the data source and the quality of the data. The setting of the study, data management, and open research data, data analysis, all these are part of the methods. And then the preliminary plan of publication. And so here, we are not just listing the method, but also how you intend to publish your results, or how you intend to publicize your research findings. And here, so you outline the number of publications that would come with it, the number of publications that would come. And not also only that, also the timeline that you expect to get these publications are also outlined. And then finally, the ethical considerations. Here, issue of ethics is very important, because recently a lot of policies have been put in place that if a research is intended to use not only human beings as the ally, but also even human data, a data that's already been collected, but certain information could be linked to the person. These research needed to seek for ethical clearance, and also researches that make use of animals are also worth considering ethical clearance as well. And in addition, also we might also need to sometimes even get the consent of the participants. And so these ethical issues needed to be sorted out, because some funding agencies will be much particular to get this information. Either they will ask as a further information, or they might not even ask, but put your application somewhere and go to the next applicant or the next form. So this outline here, we have the work packages in a graphical presentation. The outline might differ depending on the field, depending on how you want to go about it. But the various major sections are very important and worth considering. And here it's more or less like a table of, more or less like a Gantt chart to show when and what and when certain tasks would be completed. And so we have the major tasks, the work packages, the tasks, and then these are the year, the months in which we intend to carry those tasks. And this Gantt chart is very important in the project preparation, or the proposal preparation. And finally, the budget. The budget is to tell what amount you are applying for. For instance, you are applying for grant from funding agent A, and from funding agent B, and from funding agent C, but the same proposal, maybe the amount is huge, and so you want to divide it into these agencies. So how would funding agent A know how much you are taking from them? And so it is a budget that will tell how much you need for the project and how much you are requesting from agent A, agent B, or agent C. And then finally the references. So in a nutshell, this is just a sample of a research proposal that could be attached to your grant application as one of the appendices. Let us then consider the CV in brief, and before we end today's lecture. The CV, you could decide to add your picture. It's not a requirement, but if present, it doesn't change anything. But then the important aspects, one thing that worth considering is the date of the last revising or the last review. The CV is more or less like an organic material that keeps changing based on certain development or certain progress that one has made, or certain changes in, for instance, new publication has been made and we need to revise the CV. And so the date is very important in CV. The title or your degree could be outlined, and a brief introduction. Not always present, but when present, it doesn't change much. And then also your personal particulars. So the CV now here, I try to divide it into three major sections. The first aspect is the personal particulars, or your biodata, your name, date of birth, your address, your contact information, and phone numbers, and also email address. And then we have employment history, both current and then the previous employment history. And then you go to research, especially if you're applying for research grant. The research, then we have different sections under there. And so here, the section 2 is the employment history. And here we have the current jobs, So you have the job title, the institution where you worked, what you were doing, the task you were doing. And so here, we might be in an institution and perform different tasks. And so the application, what we are going to apply, use the current CV for. We need to ensure that we are directing, or we are putting information here that is relevant to the current application we are making. And then the date when that job was initiated, and if it is not continuing, the date that it will end, especially when you know the end date. And then not only that, also the contact person, the immediate supervisor or the contact person, assuming the agent or the agency wants to make contact with this, they will need to call. And so the date in which the application was made needed to be included. Just 3 minutes. I will continue in 3 minutes time. Let me feel okay. Yes, so let us continue. Yes. So, I was saying the contact person in that workplace, where if the organization where we are applying the grant to wants to confirm whether you were indeed working there or you were working there. And so such contact person's information needed to be put there. And so you go to the next job if there is any, and you follow the same pattern. And then you go to your previous job, what you've done in the past. I must say that there's no need to write all the jobs you've done in your life if it doesn't relate to that position or to that research you're doing. For instance, in between your studies, you did some menial jobs. That is related. It is important to add. But if it's something that is not related to what you're applying and doesn't have any bearing, then you might not need to include in that CV and as part of your application information. And so the positions should be outlined. And then we go to, then level 2 is academic background, your certificate, your training that makes you qualified to be the one that can perform this task, to be the one that can do this work better, to be the one that is more or less capable to perform this research or whatever you're applying for better than anybody else. And so the certificate, here I did it in chronological order, but it could, depending on, sometime the grant may specify, may give a sample to follow, and then the sample you have to go accordingly. But here, the latest one I did first, and then subsequently the in that order. So then the level 3 is after the education and then the research. The research is not just list of publications. Here we have research activities overview. I don't want to list all the research publications and all that. So how many publications do you have? And the number of publications you save as first author among all these lists, and then the H index and then I-10 index, citations. These are biodata that you can get from, for instance, ResearchGate or Google Scholar, and so you can just list them. So this is more or less like a summary of your research experience and or research activities. And then we try to be a bit more detailed. So here you have research interest. What is your current research interest? Research trainings. What are the trainings you have received that is related to research? And so we have, under the training of professional leadership and research training received. I have workshop and major professional trainings received. So workshops separate from leadership training, and sometimes the training institutions. And then you have research services rendered. So apart from the training you are receiving, what have you also rendered? Editor, reviewer, and then you can list some of the journals. So here, a sample list of some of the journals I've reviewed and or serve as an editor to that. And also, then the supervision is still part of research. You are supervising students to be able to be better researchers. And so the list of students you have supervised, and here outline very clearly how many PhD students supervised or being supervised, because if it is in progress, you state in progress, submitted for review or completed, and then master's or MPH, and then MSc, BSc, and then the total. And then, for instance, like thesis examiner, sometimes you are not a supervisor, but you are being asked to examine, to review a thesis, and then to grade it. And so you list them as well. So when a reviewer have just to take your CV, you'll be able to have an idea of how relevant you will be, of how effective you will be in this current application. And then you have the teaching and training provided. So here, the services you have been provided, you can just list some of the relevant courses and what you have been doing in those courses. And then events, for instance, conferences and speaker. And here I gave an overview, the number of conferences, and then some of which I was a speaker. And under the events still, I try to list some of the relevant conferences and events with dates I have attended. And the workshops, also some related workshops. And then we have community and social impact. So these are still under the research team or the research aspect. And so we have community and social impact, administrative positions of trust. And so you list them. And then research publications, just an outline of the number of publications you list. And here, I must also say that certain agencies or grants that we are trying to submit will separate list of publications, so you need to attach them as a separate file. Then you don't need to attach it in as part of the CV. But sometimes if it's not requested, it could be part of the CV. So publish preprint. So I try to here also not just to put everything together. So we have related journal articles in health sciences. So these are a summary of it, but not all. And then we have preprints, a citable preprint with DOI ID numbers, and these are there. And then we have book chapters, about 7 book chapters, and these are also needed to be outlined. So they are separately listed from the journal articles, from the book chapters, and then also the thesis we have worked on. And also here related thesis of here listed the most recent thesis topics at the graduate level I've worked on. And the conference publications, apart from attending conferences, sometimes we have your papers published and could be searched and cited. So conference publication. And then you have publications under process, just to have an idea of what you are currently working on. So what are publications under process or publications submitted but it's not accepted, you could also list them separately. And then research skills. So skills that are related to research. Here we could have laboratory skills. If you need to show some lab skills. You have computer skills. And so laboratory skills related to lab, computer skills here, analytical skills listed. And then you also have other things worth mentioning. So these are things that do not stand clearly to be under most of these topics. And so you would like to mention them because they are important and could help in the important role. And then teaching merits is like teaching portfolio, what you have been teaching and what classes, the number of students. So try to have an outline of that. And then you have professional membership. What association are you a member of? So try to list the associations and since when I was a member or I became a member. And eventually awards and grants or scholarships received. Some recent awards could be listed and with date before references or referees. The referees here are people that could give a good report about you that the grant agencies could contact to collect reference letters about your ability, about your research skills, and about things that could help promote you being awarded the grants. And so these are important parts of the CV. So here I must, in a quick overview, we went through the grant application toolkit, an outline of the things that are important to be in the research grant. And then as part of that, we mentioned that research proposal is an important integral part of research grant application, because that is where you are going to show what you are going to do, what you are going to use the money for, how you go about it. So the research proposal is key. But then to show to the grant agencies that, hey, I have received training, I have done similar work, I am able to do this work, they require you to submit a CV and a list of your experiences, your training, and what you have been doing, your work experiences. And so we also took some time to go through a sample CV. This is a sample. It could vary, and it could also follow a different format. But then the content or the major sections are worth mentioning, and it's worth considering. And so, in a nutshell, this is what we have done so far. And I would like to say a big thank you to all those who have been following. And if you want to hear or know more, and if you want to ask questions or want to follow the next release, just search on Google. We have a Google channel called MediRes Consult, MediRes Consult, where we provide training. We provide data collection services, especially post-market safety for pharmacy companies and food providers or deliverers or food companies, and other research-related data collection for researchers and for students who need support. Sometimes you need to collect data from other country, and you might need to travel, and the flight and everything is not something small. But then in this MediRes Consult, we have contacts, we have collaborators in many countries that can help to collect the data at a very low price. And also, if you need just training or support in this area, do not hesitate to take contact. Thank you and have a blessed day ahead. Bye for now.